Yeah, he did a great job there. Much better than I thought.
There was no need for him to be in danger, but if you're an idiot... Well, hi there. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and zoology. With my wife Leisha, we run a biology outreach called Clint's Reptile Room in Springville, Utah, which is celebrating its 5th birthday next month. We'll have a link in the description if tickets are still available. It's going to be an incredible event. I'm also a university instructor and will begin offering university level biology classes here at Clint's Reptile Room this October. And I'm an online instructor of biology and a science communicator here on the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles, which is where you are right now. And a year ago, thanks to your encouragement, I wandered onto TikTok for the very first time. And while I still think that TikTok is a poison on our society, it was a great conversation starter. It was actually the most viewed and the most liked video of 2023. So, I guess we're going back in. Mr. Jason, what do we have today?
We're going with 4 categories.
Right.
Category 1 is scary animal encounters.
Okay.
Category 2 is amazing animal abilities. Category 3 is unidentified animals.
Yep.
And category 4, because you love them, snapping turtles.
Yeah, yay. All right, let's get started.
Caught us up, and this turtle, big throwdown, and I'm right in the thick of it. Oh no! Oh! Holy Oh, this is intense. They're underneath me. Look, the tiger's got the turtle underneath me. Oh, I don't know if I'm in the best position right here. Oh, I'm between the tiger and the turtle. Uh-oh. Oh, what?
Okay, so that one was dangerous. So that was a paddleboarder in the middle of at least a pursuit of a tiger shark chasing a sea turtle, which is not a place where you want to be on a paddleboard, particularly. Tiger sharks eat like all sorts of animals. And that said, about 20% of their diet is just sea turtles. They really are quite good at eating sea turtles. They're one of the primary predators of adult sea turtles, but they are still a gape-limited predator, which means that what they can eat has to be able to fit into their mouth. And that is why the turtle is behaving the way that it is. So you'll notice when a sea turtle is being pursued by a shark, they turn sideways and face them on the upper part of their shell towards the shark, and it's really difficult for a shark to get any sort of purchase when it's sideways like that. If they were able to get the turtle from the side or the back, anything like this, it can easily bite. But up like that, it's extremely difficult. And so that is a very, very effective strategy for the turtle. However, if it's doing that around your paddleboard, you've now got a shark that is totally focused on getting food, and it's probably more likely to get purchase on your paddleboard than it is on the turtle itself, which is exactly what happened there. And that is not a situation I'd want to be in. So I would say immediately, probably the biggest risk is to your feet. And then once a shark has injured you and you're bleeding in the water, you're probably not in as much danger as you would think. That shark's already in a feeding response, and sharks don't tend to deliberately predate upon people. So they don't usually eat humans. However, they do sometimes. Usually though, people that die from shark bites, it's just due to shock and loss of blood, because an accidental shark bite of this nature would still be quite catastrophic. That said, so this is like a really bad situation to be in with a tiger shark, which is certainly top 3, probably top 2 most dangerous sharks in the world. But all that said, sharks only bite like 70 people a year. Unprovoked bites. There are a few dozen more that happen because people are harassing a shark. But they don't bite people very often. But we're still talking tiger sharks, total fatalities per year with millions of people in the ocean. 5, probably fewer than 5 tiger shark related fatalities. So, was he in danger? Yeah. Could he have died? Yeah, could he have been severely injured? Even more likely. But tiger sharks and just sharks in general are not nearly as dangerous as we think of them as being.
Let's see if he'll go for my arm here. Oh, wow. Yeah, he did a great job there. Much better than I thought. Yeah, I'll probably need stitches.
Okay, yeah. There was no need for him to be in danger, but if you're an idiot, so this is an idiot with a green iguana, a really big male green iguana, and he put himself in tremendous danger. Now, I did warn you about how many weapons big green iguanas have, and they've got lots still. Like, that iguana would have been happy to run away if he would have given it that option, but instead he went for the, what happens if I stick my arm in its mouth? I don't think he expected it to. I mean, we haven't even seen it once that starts bleeding. That thing's going to bleed like crazy. Iguanas are primarily herbivores, but they got sharp teeth for ripping leaves apart. They have what are called pleurodont teeth. We did a video actually about the iguana in which we discussed these pleurodont teeth, and they are the most firmly attached teeth that any lizards have, and they're very, very sharp. And so I've seen them sever the ends of fingers and things like that from green iguanas. He's actually very lucky that iguana was more interested in getting away than it was in really hurting him, because it only shook for a second and then let him go. It could have held on for minutes, shaking and tearing. And I mean, like the amount of damage it could have done if it would have worked at it for more than 1 second, horrifying. They've got sharp teeth, they've got strong jaws. Like, he was probably not going to die unless he just went into shock and died or refused to get any sort of medical treatment. But that was I think more danger than he realized he was in when he decided to stick his arm in its mouth.
I don't want to see this as something like this.
Stay still. Stay still. Stay still. Just see them go past.
That's cool.
That's a lifetime experience for you.
Woo!
Head back out of it.
Yeah. Take on.
Wow.
Whew. That keeps you on the edge of your seat, doesn't it? So those are orcas swimming by a couple of children. There is a reason that orcas don't kill people. And that reason is because they don't want to. That's all that stops them. Based on our historical experience with orcas in the wild, those children are in no danger. Nobody has ever been confirmed to have been killed by a wild orca. So in that way, this is just a totally rad thing. You know, like, I see videos all the time of people on kayaks and things that have orcas swim up to them or swim past them, and they're usually very nervous, and the reason for that is because those orcas could kill them so easily if they wanted to. But again, there are no officially recorded instances of orcas killing people. However, it is hard for me to imagine an animal that is more capable of killing you both in or even near the water than an orca if it wanted to. And so, you know, just any time that you have to entirely trust your life to something whose could kill you and whose culture you don't understand at all. This could be a person. It's scary. It's a scary encounter because it's just totally out of your hands, right? And those kids, I mean, they were totally fine, and they had that's going to be an awesome experience to share for the rest of their lives. I would love to have that story to tell when I was a kid, but man, if I was a parent on the shore or one of those kids, that would be terrifying. That'd be terrifying. So, all right, what's next?
The next category is amazing animal abilities.
All right.
The immortal jellyfish is a small jellyfish species native to the Mediterranean Sea. When threatened, injured, or faced with adverse environmental conditions, the jellyfish can transform back into its juvenile polyp stage, effectively starting its life cycle over again. The immortal jellyfish can repeat this process indefinitely, making it biologically immortal. The jellyfish's size ranges from 5 millimeters to 1 centimeter in diameter, and it feeds on planktonic organisms, small fish, and other jellyfish.
So I'm going to start by just saying, and I don't think this matters all that much, but I don't think any of those were actually immortal jellyfishes. That was just stock footage of random jellyfishes. But immortal jellyfishes are real, and they're really cool. So jellyfishes in general have a really interesting life cycle. It's really weird, actually. So the way that it starts, you can start at any point, but we'll start with sperm and egg. Okay, so there's a fusion of a sperm and an egg into a zygote, just like any sexually reproducing organism. That zygote begins to develop. It starts to do cell divisions. It grows into an adult jellyfish, which is settles on the bottom, and it sits there, and it's usually very small. It's physically attached to the bottom, and it sits there kind of like a sea anemone. It's called a polyp. So this is the polyp phase of the jellyfish. Doesn't look like anything you'd normally associate with being a jellyfish. That polyp then begins to form kind of these little plates. It's called an ephyra. So the little larval jellyfish is called an ephyra, and those bud off, and it'll bud off a whole bunch of them. They kind of come off in a stack that's at the end of the polyp, and each one of those buds off, and those are asexually produced by the polyp. Okay, so the polyp then buds off these ephyra, and they swim off and they grow over months or years until they become what you would usually associate with being a jellyfish. And that's called the medusa stage. And so the medusas are big, and they get together and they reproduce sexually. So they're the ones that make the sperm and the eggs. And those reproduce, with each other. A bunch of these medusae, they reproduce with one another, and then their offspring are the new polyps. So the medusas produce polyps, and the polyps produce medusas. It's an alternation of generations. Okay? That's the way that it usually works. However, in the immortal jellyfish, their medusa stage can then settle back on the bottom and be a polyp again. And then that polyp can bud off more medusae later on. And then those medusae could potentially resettle. And so arguably, this individual jellyfish, instead of being a polyp that makes a bunch of medusae but eventually dies, and then a bunch of medusae that make a bunch of polyps but eventually die themselves, instead of doing that, it can switch between being a polyp and budding off a bunch more medusae, which are asexually reproduced. And which one's the original? Which ones are clones? Who's to say? And then they can settle right back down, and so they can arguably live forever. Now, along those same lines, obviously tons of individual polyps and medusae are dying in this immortal jellyfish. But again, when a medusa settles, is it the original polyp resettling, or is it not? And then when it buds off, which one of the new medusae are the original polyp? It's really difficult to say, and so that's why an argument can be made that it's immortal. Along those same lines, an argument can be made that the first universal ancestor of all life, and at the very least the last universal common ancestor of all life, has never died. Because whenever I have a cell division, whenever a cell division happens, okay, now I've taken one cell, I've divided it into two cells. First it duplicates, all the things in it. Then it divides, it has cytokinesis. Which one's the original and which one's the new one? No way to say. All of the rest of life is just a result of subsequent cell divisions. An argument could be made that all of your cells are the original cell, or certainly that one of your cells is the original cell, and I've arbitrarily assigned it throughout all the cell divisions that have ever happened, that's the one. But all of your cells are the results of cell divisions that stem all the way back to that original common ancestor of all cellular life. So I can make, you can make an argument that this cell right here, that is the original life form still alive today, and it just happens to live in my finger. And I think that argument is just as solid as that the immortal jellyfish is truly immortal.
Recently, we proved conclusively that the Velociraptor could fly, but some of you claimed that our jump didn't qualify as powered flight. And so we have returned to the Hennessy Velociraptor to prove once and for all that Velociraptor definitely can fly. Was that proof enough for you? Ridge is doing a massive sweepstakes where the winner can win this incredible Hennessy Velociraptor, a gold Cybertruck, or $100,000 cash, which has got to be one of the hardest decisions anyone will ever have to make. The sweepstakes is running now through September 13th, and every dollar you spend at ridge.com/Clint will earn you 1 entry. And if you buy things like the Cyber Wallet or Hennessy products, you get 4 entries for every dollar spent. Plus you can enter for free at ridge.com/Clint. And to be perfectly honest, I feel a little bad for whoever wins. How are you supposed to pick between this truck, a Cybertruck, and $100,000 cash? Good luck to you.
Komodo dragons plan to kill a buffalo for 3 months.
Watch carefully, as after a month-long wait, the Komodo dragon finally feasts on buffalo meat. Let's see how the Komodo dragon brings down the wild buffalo. Despite being several times larger than the Komodo dragon, the buffalo's formidable size instills no fear in the reptile. A buffalo lies asleep in a nearly dried-up waterhole, while the Komodo dragon lurks nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the buffalo's eyes, this small lizard poses no threat. However, its complacency soon costs it dearly. The dragon's bite causes only a minor flesh wound to the buffalo, but the sight of blood stirs the other dragons into action. Deciding to leave, the buffalo tries to avoid the nuisance of these little lizards. It seems the Komodo dragons have failed in their hunt, but their interest in the buffalo remains high. Wherever the buffalo goes, they follow. Days pass, and not only does the buffalo's wound fail to heal, but it also appears much weaker. The Komodo dragon, like a venomous snake, can secrete toxins. Although not as potent as those of snakes, they are lethal enough to kill. 2 weeks later, the waterhole is dried up. The dragons are enjoying a feast. In just 3 hours, the buffalo is reduced to a skeleton.
All right, so there was a bunch of stuff said there. So one thing, it talks about this being, like, what did it say, 3 months, and then maybe a month, and followed it for a couple of weeks. So I don't know how long, but over a long period of time, they're working on killing and then eventually eating this water buffalo. Also, and this has been something that I've only heard about more recently, is this the venom that's lethal enough to kill. So, like I said, I've heard about this basic hunting strategy from Komodo dragons my whole life. I remember watching documentaries about this when I was a kid. Only recently, really in the last few years, have I began to question this narrative. One of the things that really has been interesting in recent years is the switch talking about venom, how Komodo dragons are venomous, versus when I was a kid, there was no discussion of Komodo dragons being venomous. The question was about the bacteria in their mouths that they would bite, and they have so much nasty bacteria and like rotting flesh in their mouths that it causes sepsis and they die. And so that was fine until I started to know a lot more about monitor lizards and ecology, and I just started to ask some key questions. For one thing, monitor lizards, they don't usually hunt this way. This isn't how monitors eat. Usually what a monitor lizard will do is it will overpower some prey, kill it right then, and then eat it. They're not strategizing for like weeks and months in advance and thinking, okay, I'm gonna injure this now, then the bacteria in my mouth is gonna go into effect. I'm just gonna track it all that time and then eventually I'm going to have a big meal. I really, like, I can't think of anything that hunts like that. Maybe there is something that does. I can't think of anything that hunts that way. But that doesn't mean that they don't. They could be the first. So I had a couple of questions. And my first question was, are the water buffalo native? Because they're kind of a big mammal for an island. You know, mammals tend to get smaller on islands. Reptiles often larger, which is why the largest lizards in the world live on an island. But it's weird to see such big buffalo, because it's just hard to have a sustainable population of large mammals on a small island. And as I started to look into this, the answer is no. The water buffalo are not native to the Komodo Islands. They were introduced by humans. The same thing is also true for the large deer and wild pigs that they eat. So there are other large ungulates out there on the islands in addition to the water buffalo. All of them were introduced by humans within the last few thousand years. But that said, before the introduction of these animals, there was a relatively large herbivore that was a mammal that lived on these islands, and it was a relative of elephants called a stegodon. So they also, I think, had island dwarfism, so they were small for elephant relatives, but still a fairly large mammal. So the Komodos have existed historically with fairly large mammals in their presence. So it is possible that they could have some sort of a hunting strategy for fairly large mammals. That's totally possible. That said, you know, when you see them hunting buffalo now, they were showing them hunting adults, and obviously they will come up and bite an adult from time to time. Usually, though, what I see is them targeting juveniles, and that was likely also the case with the stegodons, that they would hunt juveniles, not necessarily adults. So that was my first question. The buffalo aren't native, but it is totally on the table that they are adapted to hunt large mammals. So the new question is, could the bacteria or the venom in their mouths kill a buffalo? And the bacteria have in recent decades kind of fallen out of favor as the explanation for the deaths of these buffalo, because as we've done analysis of the bacteria in the mouths of wild Komodo dragons, what we have found is that the bacteria are very similar to the bacteria in the mouths of other carnivorous animals. So they don't have a particularly unusual oral fauna going on in there. They are basically like any other carnivore when it comes to the bacteria in their mouths. However, in recent decades, we have gained more support for the concept of a whole clade of lizards called the Toxicophora, which would include the monitor lizards. And so an argument can be made that all of the monitor lizards are venomous, and you can extract compounds in the saliva of Komodo dragons that are venomous. Okay, they have some anticoagulant properties and some mild neurotoxic properties. So I can make an argument that humans are venomous because we've got digestive enzymes in our saliva, and so if you bite somebody, you're actually probably starting to do some very minor localized tissue damage with your saliva. How liberal do we want to be with the term venom? But if you're bitten by a Komodo dragon, the saliva can probably result in some localized swelling, other problems like localized blood clotting issues, and pain that's going to last for a few hours. But if you were ever bitten by a Komodo dragon, I would say that the thing you need to worry about is not particularly the mouth bacteria or the venom. It's just the teeth. There are no croc monitor teeth. Hence my level of concern when I was interacting with croc monitors. But they will still deliver a lacerating, nasty wound. The kind of wound that is likely to put you into shock and possibly cause you to bleed out rather quickly. Now, of course, if you are a water buffalo and you instinctively flee to feces-laden mud holes after you've been attacked by a predator and you have a lacerated, nasty wound, you might die from sepsis sometime later. And when you die, or are near death and you live on an island with Komodo dragons, yeah, they're going to eat you. Not necessarily the same dragon that bit you, but the dragons will make sure that your infection-laden corpse doesn't go to waste. So the takeaway is Komodo dragons bite stuff. When they bite stuff, if you're a water buffalo, it's probably going to get infected. And when you die, you will probably be eaten by Komodo dragons. But I don't think there's really any evidence that this is a hunting strategy that they have, that the same Komodo dragon is going to bite you and then wait you out until you die of sepsis. That's just not the way that it works. That was awesome. Okay. So that was a green heron, and you know it's a green heron because they're notorious for this. It was using bait to fish, which is awesome. They'll use, I don't know what that one was specifically, but they use stuff like small sticks, feathers, insects, crusts of bread, which I think is impressive because it shows that they can figure out new tools. So it's not just that they have an instinct to throw sticks in there for reasons they don't understand. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're like, this'll work. And so they bait fish in, and when fish go to eat this food that they've thrown out there, fake food that they've thrown out there, they eat them. It's totally rad. Tool use in a non-corvid bird.
I think they're even trying to run away.
The cubs are the ones that are going. The mother's now with the honey badger.
But you think the honey badger would run away when it got the opportunity? No way.
Warren, die Kapitän. Is it the honey badger?
Yep.
It escaped.
I love that. So, they're like, why didn't it run away? And by the end, when it doesn't run away, it struts away. And those leopards have no interest in pursuing it anymore. They're like, geez, not that. Okay, so that was a honey badger and looked to be a female leopard and her two large cubs trying to take down that honey badger, and it didn't work. I mean, when I gotta tell you, like, generally speaking, when a leopard has you by the back of the head and another leopard has you by the hindquarters and they're stretching you in two different directions, like, it's over. That's how you die. But not if you're a honey badger. Honey badgers, obviously, I mean, it's getting bitten by leopards there. They've got skin like on and around their neck that's like 1/4 of an inch thick. It's really difficult for anything to penetrate it. And then that skin is also super loose. So you can grab it back behind the head as that mother leopard was doing, and it just rotates around and bites you on the face because that skin's so loose. Honey badgers, they're just tough. They're so tough. And that's also a good example of the fact that when you're dealing with predators, you don't have to win, right? That honey badger probably came out of that interaction worse off than the leopards did. You just have to be more trouble than you're worth. The risk of serious injury was just too high. And that's also part of why it didn't just try to turn and run every time it got a chance. That was just going to result in it getting grabbed again. It just fought. It just came after leopards, and it's just like, it's fighting like crazy until the leopards show that it's like, oh, just please leave. And then it just struts off across the little stream. Like, yeah, that's what I thought. Because honey badgers are awesome. I love them. Many of you already know this, but almost every week we put out an entire extra video for our Stinking Rad fans at Patreon. And I got to tell you, this week's video is awesome. And so if you're interested in seeing this video or the host of other videos and other awesome content that we have specifically for our patrons, please consider checking it out. All right, so what's next?
All right, the next category is animal identification.
All right.
The first of many strange creatures we're looking at, the one featured in this video, uploaded to YouTube by channel Kiwi TV, is truly unlike anything we've seen before, and it's clear the person capturing the video felt the same way. Featuring an odd marine creature captured on video in a Chinese river, this short clip is worth considerable study. Featuring a creature similar in size and stature to an alligator or crocodile, this creature's long protruding snout and unique facial structure makes it clear that it's neither. While one user asserts that the creature is a river dolphin, these creatures usually have snouts that protrude further out from their faces and bodies that more closely resemble dolphins that live in the ocean. More eel-like than other common amphibians while being impressive in size, this creature's overall makeup has us stumped as to what it could be. Love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comment section below.
I'm pretty sure what that is wasn't the greatest look, but I think that's a beaked whale. So I didn't even know about beaked whales until, I mean, it's been a while now, but they were kind of the cetaceans that escaped my knowledge for the longest, that I just wasn't aware of them until I was actually studying zoology, and it was just because I happened to notice them on a poster at the university where I was. But a lot of male beaked whales have these tusks that can kind of come up and go over the top of their rostrum, and so I think that's what you're seeing there on the side are the little tusks, and then the beak. There you get one shot where it really does look like the nose of a dolphin. And beaked whale, final answer. That's a tamandua, and I want one. You actually, it is possible to get one. Someday there will probably be a tamandua, the best pet mammal video. They're not the best pet mammal, but they're so cool. What they are is an arboreal anteater. And what it is doing there when it stood up like that, so they've got these big old, I mean, anteaters in general have these giant slashing claws that they use to tear open termite mounds and ant nests, and also, in this case, to climb. They climb with them, and so they're very serious claws. They also have no teeth. So, you know, their bite is not something to worry about, but those big old slashing claws totally are. So it's standing up and doing a big threat display. They were chasing it, and it stood up and went, "Hey, I'll mess you up," you know, all Wolverine style. But they're super cool. Those live in Central and South America. And I'm not sure if I've ever even actually seen one in person, but I love them. I love them. They're such a cool mammal.
Unknown shape-shifting animal.
All right, that looks like a fox on stilts, but what that actually is a maned wolf, which is the largest canid in South America. It is not itself a fox or a wolf, though, you know, pretty soon when we do a video on all of the canids, we will discover that neither of those words mean much. But I'll explain that soon. But in a nutshell, this creature is more closely related to a gray wolf than it is to a red fox, but it is more closely related to a bunch of things that we call foxes than it is to anything else that we would call a wolf. They're most closely related to an animal called a bush dog, since the Falkland Island wolf is now extinct. But this is the tallest of all wild canids, and it's so tall because it lives in grasslands, and so that allows it to walk around and look over the top of things. Totally cool animal. Love them. Not a wolf, not a fox. It's a maned wolf.
I found this poisonous-looking animal behind a stone. Finally built up the courage to take a closer look. Anyone know what it is or how many eggs?
Okay, so that is a female skink. It looks to me like a 5-line skink, and I love 5-line skinks. For one thing, they are great moms. They will brood the eggs like that for 1 to 2 months, and they'll not only protect them from potential predators, they'll also make sure that they maintain the proper moisture levels for the eggs. And they have a whole lot of behavioral things that they'll do to make sure that the moisture levels stay right. They sometimes brood alone, like that one was doing. They also will brood in groups. And when they brood in groups, they share responsibilities. So some females will leave and eat and things like that, and then they come back and trade off, and other females take care of the eggs. It's really, really cool. To my knowledge, 5-line skinks, maybe all skinks, I don't know of any of them to be poisonous. But they do have a blue tail, and sometimes bright colors like that indicate to people this might be poisonous or otherwise something that you shouldn't tangle with. And the blue tail is really cool. Usually, so in adult male 5-line skinks in particular, look nothing like that. Juveniles do. Juveniles have the stripes and they've got the bright blue tail. Females usually maintain the stripes into adulthood, but that tail greatly fades. However, that one still had a pretty nice blue tail, so maybe she was a young female, or it could be a different species I'm not as aware of. Either way, the blue tail serves a very specific function, and that is it attracts the attention of predators. So it's actually doing the opposite of what you would want if it was aposematic coloration warning about being dangerous. It attracts their attention, and they've tested for this using clay models. So they would make clay models of skinks, and they would make different parts of the body bright blue like that, either the head, the body, or the tail. And then they would set them out, and they would come back and they would observe where those had been attacked by predators. Because they're clay models, they're soft clay, you could see all kinds of damage to whatever regions of the body the predators were going for. And the predators go for the blue parts. And this is beneficial for 2 reasons, having it on the tail specifically. One of them is, if a predator goes for your head, that can kill you. If it goes for your body, that can kill you. If it gets your tail, you can drop that and run away and live for another day. That's beneficial. Of course, it'd be more beneficial if the predator just didn't go for any part of your body. So having a conspicuous tail is on its own is not necessarily great, even though you can drop it. Here's the thing though. If your head was blue and it swipes for your head and misses, it's still going to get your body. If your body's blue and it swipes and misses, it's still going to get your tail. But if your tail is blue, not only can you drop that, but it's the tailing edge of you. If they swipe and miss it all, they've missed you entirely. And so having something that draws their attention to not only the part you can drop, but the last part of your body that they could possibly grab has been very beneficial historically, especially for young skinks. Similar to the Loch Ness Monster? Okay, so what that looks like to me... so what I know it is a leopard seal. It looks like a very hungry leopard seal, but that could have just been a camera angle. What it is clearly not the Loch Ness Monster, though I suppose it's very unlikely, but probably more likely that the Loch Ness Monster is a leopard seal than a plesiosaur. So maybe it is the Loch Ness Monster. But whether or not it is the Loch Ness Monster, an argument can certainly be made that leopard seals are monsters in their own right, especially if you are a penguin, a cephalopod, or another seal. I would say the only thing scarier if you're one of those things are orcas and people. And just for the record, wild leopard seals have more confirmed kills of humans than wild orcas. So, this is a cool thing. I am impressed that they did have the right location, because these do live around Antarctica, and that's pretty much it. That's a sloth. I couldn't see its hands or its face well enough to tell you what kind of sloth it is. But sloths, this is often surprising to people, sloths can swim. And they often do this, especially when they're searching for a mate. Sometimes there's not a mate in your tree. You got to get elsewhere. And so they can swim. They'll swim to find a mate. Now, since I can't tell you which kind of sloth this is, I'll at least give you 2 great sloth facts. First one. 2-toed and 3-toed sloths look a lot alike. So much so that I can't tell which one this is. Though if I had to guess, No, I don't know. Okay. But so they act very similar and they look very similar, but they're only very distantly related. They both appeared to have independently evolved from terrestrial ancestors. So they shared a terrestrial ancestor, and they are both two separate lineages that have evolved to a very similar arboreal lifestyle. Because that's fun sloth fact number 1 for all your sloth dinner parties. Sloth fact number 2, all mammals, including things like giraffes, whales, platypuses, dugongs, all mammals have 7 neck vertebrae. Except for manatees, which only have 6. Again, dugongs have 7, but manatees only have 6, and sloths. 3-toed sloths, depending on the species, have 8 or 9 neck vertebrae, cervical vertebrae. And 2-toed sloths, just to be contrary, have somewhere between 5 and 7. So some of them do have 7, but some of them have 5 or 6. Because sloths are crazy. If you saw the second part of our phylogeny of insects, you already know what this is. But for those of you who don't, it's a Dobson fly. And this one, you can tell easily, you can tell from 40 feet away, because of the size of it, that this one is a male. And it's actually not because of the size, though that'll help you identify it. It's because of those ginormous mandibles. You only see those on the males. And so that is an obvious Dobson fly. Anybody who knows what a Dobson fly is can tell you that's a Dobson fly, but not everybody knows what a Dobson fly is, and now you do. Hold on it. Water, just pat it. Just pat that. Jiggle it. I'm glad he got some jiggling in. That's just horrible. I've been seeing a lot of this, and it's awful. I mean, can you imagine what the hours leading up to this must have been like? I mean, you wake up in a stream, someone has been filming you sleeping, and while you were in that compromised state, someone, who knows who, glued a bunch of beans to your leg and then covered them with dirt. I don't even think it was the camera person, as they were just as respectfully silent as they were while they were filming you sleep. There was not a peep of laughter. Also no sign of fear or distress or desire to help you. They're just filming away like a wildlife photographer filming a predation event. Like they film river nappers wake up as bean art canvases every morning. I'd love to know what kind of glue they use, though. That seems like really good stuff. But those are beans.
Mutant animals found in Chernobyl. Deer. Headless deer was spotted running in Chernobyl. Goat. This goat was born with one eye.
Alright, so we're getting a 2-for-1 this time. Surprisingly, unlike the last one, neither of those videos are fake. Those are both real videos of real living animals. The first one is a deer. Specifically, it's a moose. It's looking away from the camera as it runs. That's why we can't see its head, but it does have a head. I see no reason to suspect that it was filmed anywhere near Chernobyl. Though there are moose in that part of the Ukraine, so it's possible. But a nuclear disaster isn't the only reason that a moose might be rubbernecking. That's all I'm saying. The second one, though, that really is a goat with one eye. It's actually a pretty textbook case of a terrible and fatal condition called cyclopia, which happens in goats and humans, as well as many other species. Things. It happens in sharks. It happens, all sorts of mammals, all over the place. It impacts not only the development of the eyes, but also the mouth and nose. You might have noticed that goat, like, it wasn't just that it had one eye, like its nose is kind of missing. A lot of times they develop like inside of the mouth or in weird locations relative to the eye. It causes problems that usually lead them to die within a few hours or less of being born. As far as the causes, it's linked, I know, to some plants, but kind of like the last one, I see no reason to suspect that it has anything to do with the Chernobyl disaster. But it is a terrible condition and something that's real.
Just watching this cow pee, and then all of a sudden there's like a llama deer, and I didn't even know what this thing is. Anybody tell me what this thing is? I'm gonna think it's a leer until somebody tells me what it is. An antelope? It's probably an antelope.
Llama deer. We got two or three options there. There's either it's llama deer or antelope, or llama deer or antelope. What it is none of those things. It is a pronghorn, which is the second fastest land animal. And the thing is, they live in North America, which is not anywhere close to the fastest land animal, which would be the cheetah, which can lead to the big question of how did the second fastest land animal end up, well, why does it need that speed? And the most likely reason is because they originally evolved in the presence of the American cheetah. Now, the American cheetah, to my understanding, is not actually super closely related to the African cheetahs. I think it was more closely related to mountain lions, but in fairness, mountain lions are fairly closely related to cheetahs. So let's put it this way. It is more closely related to the African cheetahs than mountain lions are to lions. Quite a lot. So, but it was very fast. These guys are the second fastest, just top speed of any land animal, and the fastest over relatively long distances. They can maintain high speeds for much longer than an African cheetah can. That said, like I already mentioned, it's not an antelope. It's no more closely related to an antelope than it is to a deer, and it's more closely related to a whale than it is to a llama. So it's not a llama deer for sure. That said, their closest relatives are giraffes and okapis. And really, when you get a good look at a pronghorn next to a true antelope, you'll notice a lot of ways that they're very different. But one way that they're different from antelope and deer, and maybe more similar to giraffes, is when you get a good look at their pronghorns. So deer have horns that are bony and do not have any sort of a sheath on the outside, at least once they've fully developed, and then they are shed annually. Horns, conversely, have a bony core and then a sheath on the outside, and they don't shed any of that. What giraffes have are called ossicones, and those have a bony core that is covered in skin. Pronghorns, now here's another thing, horns never fork, and antlers frequently do. Okay, so those are the three things you're probably most familiar with. Pronghorns have a bony core covered in skin, so far it's just a typical ossicone. But then it has a hardened sheath on the outside that forks, sort of like an antler, but it's not. It's not an antler. It's made of keratin, like your fingernails, or like the sheaths on the outer parts of horns. They're not bony like antlers. So it's got a keratinous sheath on the outside that forks and is shed annually. So they shed the outer sheath, leaving them with basically normal giraffe-style ossicones once they shed that sheath off of the outside. So it's more ossicone-like than it's like anything else. But when you see them with the sheath intact, it looks like a horn antler. And so not a llama deer, but it does look a little bit like a deer antelope. But again, closer to being a giraffe. All right, so what now?
The next category is snapping turtles.
Yay! All right, snapping turtle number 1.
Our big snapper had a baby. From the moment he was born, he had to fend for himself in the wild. Their moms don't take care of him. They're called hatchlings. He'll live 20 to 45 more years. When he grows up, he'll get rid of all the dead animals in our pond. We were about to release this guy, but he escaped on the glizzy in his bowl. So long, buddy.
So that one is not a snapping turtle or a baby turtle. I couldn't see its carapace, which is the top shell, very well, but from what I could see, I mean, it's definitely some sort of mud or musk turtle. Looks to me like a common musk turtle or something similar to that. They are very closely related to snapping turtles, but they're smaller. They're considerably smaller than snapping turtles, and on top of being smaller, you can tell them apart because they've got a very short tail, where the snapping turtles have very long tails. They've got a very big plastron, where the snapping turtle plastron of both of the major groups of snapping turtles, it's kind of shaped like a cross. And then they've got a shorter neck than a common snapping turtle. And so there's a lot of things that are different about them. Again, it is a close relative of snapping turtles, but it is not a snapping turtle. And because they're so small, that one actually may have been an adult, or at least a very large juvenile. All right, hoping for a snapping turtle this time.
No.
Those things are as old as...
Hey, what you doing, little man? What you doing, little man? Your little pet. Ah!
Did it get you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how else that was supposed to go. Okay, so that one was a snapping turtle, and that was something I've never done. I've never been bitten by a turtle of any kind, but I will tell you that snapping turtle is not only a snapping turtle, that's my favorite of all turtles. That is a snapping turtle. That would be one of the 3 species in the genus Calidra, and there is another genus. Okay, so there's also the genus Macrochelys, which are your like alligator snapping turtles. So there are 3 species of relatives of the common snapping turtle. That one that looked to be in the United States, so that is probably the common snapping turtle. There's also a Central American and South American snapping turtle. Other than where they are, I would have a hard time telling you which one is which. I've never seen the latter 2. But Macrochelys, alligator snapping turtles, there's 2 species now, but it's very difficult to distinguish between the 2 of them. And it's very easy, though, to tell them apart from Calidra. And so a few differences. One of them is the long neck. That long neck, quick snap like that can only be Calidra. On top of that, their shells tend to be much smoother, and they don't get quite as large, though they do get potentially very big, like 50 pounds. So they're still huge. The Calidra do not hunt with the worm tongue lure. They're suction feeders like a mata, whereas the Macrochelys, they have the short neck, but they just sit there with their mouth open and wiggle that little tongue worm around until something goes in there. And this is a crazy thing because alligator snapping turtles are so big, but the Calidra have greater bite force. So if you had to pick one to be bitten by, you would actually want to pick an alligator snapping turtle. They live their lives like a bear trap, and they basically need strong jaws only to close the trap quickly. And you'll see them biting through stuff. Like people talk about rumors of them biting through broomsticks and things like that. I've never seen that. Anytime I've seen people doing demonstrations of the bite force of really any of the snapping turtles, it's usually soft things like hot dogs, cucumbers. Maybe the toughest thing I've seen them bite through is a carrot, and it seemed like they were struggling on that one a little bit. But Calidra, the common snapping turtles, have considerably greater bite force than Macrochelys. And I would not bet a finger that they can't bite your fingers off, but it's probably not as catastrophic as the rumors would tell.
Alright, so we found this big old snapping turtle in this pond that we're dredging this head section on. And I'm going to see if that old wives' tale about a snapping turtle biting a stick is true. Come on, bite the stick. Show everybody how big of a bite you got. Come on, bite it. Alright. That turtle just looked at me like he wants to hurt me real bad, so I'm gonna leave him alone. You're right, that was kind of mean.
Like that takeaway. That turtle looked like he wanted to hurt me real bad, as evidenced by the fact that I tried to stick something straight into his mouth and he didn't bite it. There's sticking a muddy stick on my face. Please go away. I want to point something out there. So that is an actual common snapping turtle. There's a couple things that I think are really interesting. One of them was how reluctant it was to bite. Snapping turtles, I'm getting the impression more and more all the time that they're really not all that inclined to try to hurt somebody. Something else, though, that I find really interesting, so that makes this not perfect evidence, is it is incredible to me how well many reptiles can discern an inanimate object from an actual part of your body. Like, there's all kinds of things. I mean, you can usually, take any wild snake and you could just poke it in the face with something inanimate and it wouldn't strike or respond aggressively in any way. But if you tried to do it with your finger, even with something that doesn't have heat detecting capabilities, like, it'll react totally differently. Yeah, you can do it with lizards. It's actually why there's a technique for catching lizards that I think is very, very poorly named. They usually call it noosing, but I would say that it is accurately lassoing. It's much more of a lasso. And I like, who was the PR person in charge of deciding what we should call this? So henceforth, lassoing. Well, you can lasso a lizard, and the reason that it works is because with an inanimate object, they'll let you poke them right in the face. But if you tried to reach over there with your hand, they're not going to put up with that. And so you just basically take like a fishing pole with a little lasso at the end of it, and you just kind of go, and they'll let you put it right around their neck, and then you've got a lassoed lizard. And that's probably the easiest way there is to catch a live lizard. But anyway, he certainly didn't want to bite that stick, and arguably doesn't want to bite at all.
Jeez, that's a big turtle. Come down. Wow. And that turtle probably weighs close to 50 pounds. Now, the snapping turtle gets its name, of course, from that powerful bite. And those jaws are bone crushing. If I were to get my finger stuck into the mouth of that turtle, there's a good chance I would not be getting it back. One distinct feature that separates this turtle from other turtle species is its shell. Now, the top of the shell, whoa, watch out for that bite, is called the carapace. You can see just how massive this turtle truly is when I set it in water like that. But the underside of the snapping turtle, which is called the plastron, is very distinct. Do you see how small the underside of this turtle is? Their arms and legs are not capable of being tucked into the shell like other turtle species. That's why they have developed these incredibly defensive traits. Watch yourself, I'm bringing the turtle back down here in front. Okay, let me get it back up on my knee. That is an absolute dinosaur right there. As we know, turtles are in no way related to dinosaurs, but turtles and their ancestors have been on the planet for more than 200 million years. And you can see that just the evolutionary state of this turtle has not taken it far from prehistoric times. And one of the most terrifying things about a snapping turtle is that if you're in this environment and you come across those jaws and you get caught, you are alive when it begins to eat you.
So, for starters, and I think this is just a joke, but snapping turtles don't eat people. On the other hand, I've never actually heard of this happening. I'm sure it has happened, but I've never heard of anybody being bitten by a snapping turtle while it was in the water. In general, when you're in the water with a snapping turtle, a common snapping turtle like that one, they're very curious, and so they'll stay about 6 feet away from you and just watch you. But they're not prone to attacking people or anything like that. One thing that I want to correct really quickly is they are actually fairly closely related to dinosaurs, much more closely than anything like snakes and lizards, tuataras, things like that. There are two big lineages. One of them is the Lepidosauria. We'll be doing a full phylogeny of every family in the Lepidosauria that'll be coming out just a little bit later this year in November. But the other lineage is called the Archelosauria. And that includes just 3 things that are alive right now. Crocodilians, dinosaurs, which birds are the only surviving dinosaurs, but dinosaurs, and turtles. So they are more closely related to dinosaurs than anything else alive today except for crocodilians. Crocodilians are the only thing more closely related to dinosaurs. And it's still pretty distant. It goes back a long time. But, you know, a lot closer than a lot of things. You know, people see Gus and they're like, he's a dinosaur. No, he's not. These are much closer. As far, this is kind of a wild thing because snapping turtles do look positively primeval, right? They look prehistoric. And this group of turtles actually does date back to the late Cretaceous. So there were, you know, things that you would recognize as being a snapping turtle living alongside Tyrannosaurus rex. They go back more than 66 million years ago. But turtles are at least 230 million years old. And that means that this snapping turtle body plan is actually a fairly recent turtle body plan. You know, having this long tail and this small plastron and stuff, that's not the ancestral turtle condition still preserved in the snapping turtle lineage. Those are derived characters for the way that they're living, if not now, in the very recent past, relatively. Like I said before, I wouldn't bet a finger that they can't remove a finger. I think that turtle seriously might have been able to remove a finger, which is why you shouldn't taunt it in its bite zone. You know, their strike is so fast you can't actually react to the movement. By the time that you have noticed the movement, it's too late. That said, so that is a very, very intimidating turtle. I also have evidence that they are completely misunderstood. And this plays a little bit. I mean, I loved them even when I thought I understood them correctly as monsters. But I don't think that's what they are at all. And if you want to see what that evidence is, now would be a great time to watch this video. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon.
Yeah, I was just, hanging out, watching this cow pee.
Yep.
As you do.
And I saw this llama deer.
It distracted me from the pee.
Yeah.
I'm recording it.
You act like you've never done it.